They were like, we want to show the company your website. I'm like, stand by. And I go like, make a little website. Um, when people ask me if I have hobbies, I usually end up telling them I don't have any hobbies because I get passionate about them enough that that turns into my job. I still think it's an era where it's going to be on the job training. So find jobs that you can do that you enjoy doing and try to put as many of them together as you can.
Welcome to Recast and Rise, the podcast for performers and creatives ready to explore what's next. You'll hear inspiring stories of artists who reinvented themselves and found new careers after the stage. Let's recast and rise. Hello, Brad. Welcome to the podcast.
Hello, Eve. I'm glad to be here. I'm super chatty. I'm ready to tell stories.
Yes, I love chatty people. Let's do this. So, Brad, your story is very unique because you were an actor, you were a comedian, you did some stunt work, a lot of different things, and then you transitioned into being a rigger. So this is really interesting. I am so excited to hear that. But first, let's take our time. Tell us about your journey when you started as an actor, a comedian, all of that. So yeah, let's get starting there.
Sure. I grew up in a small town in Michigan, and I went to college to be a police officer because I didn't know that there was anything else I could do. While I was in college, I ended up in the theater department and I started doing plays. And then I ended up graduating college with an acting degree. And then during that time, I was doing a ton of Shakespeare plays and a ton of regular theater. Anybody who sang was not as serious as I was, I thought. And if I could have wore a turtleneck and a beret, I would have. That's how serious I was. And then somewhere in there, I started doing these weird little comedy shows. And then I figured out that, oh, I really liked being funny. And I got very passionate about being funny and I started to choose more of that. Actually, if I think about it, my acting was very serious. And then this dorky comedy thing was just goofing around.
Okay.
And then quickly that kind of I realized, I'm funny. I'm the funny person and I like being funny and I like the way it makes other people feel. So I want to do more of that. And in that, I started to learn some circus skills and perform at things like the Renaissance Festival and variety shows and burlesque shows so that I could get more stage time. I just wanted to be on stage more. So if I could learn 3 tricks on the Diablo, then I get more stage time. Well, then that opened up to a little bit of like low level circus performing. But the internet wasn't what the internet is now. You couldn't figure out where things were happening. I was in Michigan, and so I wasn't running into circus people. And then all of a sudden I would run into circus people. And also, again, in my mind, completely unrelated, I was starting to do stuntman work where I was doing a lot of sword fighting and then a lot of fist fighting. And then I went to stuntman school and I did a lot of other stuff there. And I met people from all around the world. And so for about 16 years, when I wasn't having to work other jobs to keep myself afloat, I was either doing stunt shows or performing in comedy shows. And then the third thing I would do would be I'd work as a handyman, or I'd do my little side jobs, whatever it needed to be. And that journey, yeah, that was 10 or 12 years it took. Like, it wasn't fast.
Uh-huh.
I didn't get picked up by anybody and then that was it. But it was, by the time I kind of stopped doing it, well, that was my full-time job. I bought my first house with my comedy money, and I was living in Los Angeles, and I was working on television shows, and I was doing some writing, and I was in a couple of regular stunt shows there. So it's like anybody else would tell you, it's a long game. And I just kept sticking it out and just kept wanting to perform and kept performing as long as I could until I transitioned into something else.
Your path is definitely not linear. Started school wanting to be a police officer,
Sure.
and then here you are in LA, having done so many different arts, different, performance skills. That's incredible.
Yeah, I was somewhere in college. One of my acting teachers, he was the one that I liked. He said, and this is the advice I give to other people as well. He said, you can do 2 things. You can pick a goal. Here's my specific goal. I want to be an elite athlete, or I want to do this thing. I want to be a doctor. And you can be very dedicated to it. You can take all the steps and go one right after another and do it and get into it. And you'll either reach that goal or you won't. And some people don't reach that goal, or life sidetracks them somehow. And you'll definitely get there quicker. It's a much more linear or logical step taking. And then he said, or you can kind of be open to the fact that there's a handful of things that you like, or that touch you in some way. And if you remain open to those and continue to pursue them as best you can, you'll eventually get to some place that fits you better. It won't seem very logical at the time when you look back on it. Now, when I look back on it, it seems very logical.
Yeah. Yeah.
But you couldn't have planned that. And usually I try to make sure that when I tell that story or I let other people know about it, it's a much longer path. And you can easily get distracted, but you'll end up getting something out of it that you want later down the road. When people ask me if I have hobbies, I usually end up telling them I don't have any hobbies, because I get passionate about them enough that turns into my job.
That is so great. I've never heard that. That is so true. And
Yeah.
You're lucky that your passions can actually lead into work.
Kind of. I mean, it's okay if they don't.
Yeah. Yeah,
I went
exactly.
through my BB gun phase and my knife throwing phase, and neither of those turned into a job. But I definitely met, the people that I meet along the way, or even
Yeah.
now, the job that I have now is kind of not really a job as well. But it's definitely not something you could plan for.
Yeah.
And it had to whatever degree on anybody else's metric, it's worked out to a degree or not worked.
It's wonderful. I absolutely love that you remember your teacher and how that probably, would you say, Brett, obviously it stick with you until today.
Well,
but
it was either the best advice I ever got or the worst advice I ever got. So it's hard to, it's not, there's probably both.
Yeah.
Probably exactly 50-50 both. I could have just picked 3 things and had a job and bought a house by the time I was 25, but that's not the path I ended up on.
It sounds like I always think of a career change in 3 different stages, exploration, then you research, and then you take action and take your next step.
Yeah.
It sounds like you were in the exploration phase for a very long time, but it led to beautiful, different variety of things that you've done. You were exploring. It sounds like you were open to opportunities, like, constantly.
Yes.
Yeah, it's amazing.
And still am. I think it's very much been that's been my path ever since I was told that. I probably would have gone along that path. He just happened to crystallize it fairly well.
Yeah. Yes. So then you were in LA. Okay. So what happened after that? Because now you are working with Fight and Flight Entertainment.
Mm-hmm.
Tell us about that. Like, what's the gap there, or did you start that
Sure.
transition?
I was doing fairly well as a performer. I had some shows that over about 3 years, I had some shows that I had written, and I was doing a lot of very regular stunt work, and I was doing a lot of television and movie stuff. And I had ended up getting married, and like most people, I ended up getting married to somebody who didn't really understand how much time it took to be this successful, and as relationships do over time, really just kind of wanted me to have a more understandable job or a more regular job or something like that.
Yep.
We had a house and I had a stepdaughter, and there was pressure on me from them and from society in general that I should be more serious and do something that other people understood. And that pressure took a lot of the fun out of performing, which I felt then made me not a good performer. So I started to feel that all of the weight of that made me feel like I wasn't doing as well and I didn't have things to offer. And of course, I'm being nudged to do something more logical. So unfortunately, that kind of span of time, those 2 or 3 years, I started doing less performing, and we moved from Los Angeles to Vegas because it was cheaper to live there. And I started to pursue, like, what are these other skills that I have? I'm kind of handy. I can work in a shop. a scene shop or something like that, and just kind of started moving a little bit in that direction. I do remember when I officially stopped performing. Like I remember walking backstage and telling someone and just feeling all of the weight of the world of all of these other things on me. And I walked backstage and I'm like, I think I told my friend, I'm like, I think I'm all done. And I didn't want to be I definitely didn't want to be one of the performers that I had seen that had just kind of kept their act and kept going, but
Mm.
they'd lost the things that were there when they were really in the mix. I didn't want to be that. So I felt like, well, to kind of tear the band-aid off and kind of do it. And yeah, and so then of course I don't have any other marketable skills. I'm not performing anymore. There's no stunt shows in Vegas for me to be in. And I end up getting the quick transition outside of the relationship thing is I got a job at a scene shop. I got a job at the scene shop at the MGM Grand. And the job at the scene shop at the MGM Grand was responsible for maintaining the rigging in Studio 54 for the acrobats that they had there. And then we also had crossover with Ka, which was only 3 or 4 years old at the time. So in my 2 years at that scene shop, I learned how to fabricate everything I could ever want to fabricate. But I would see people in harnesses and ropes. And I was like, well, hang on. I have a harness and I have ropes. And I used to run a zip line for 5 years. I knew enough from stunts like that. Wire work and stunt work was starting to do a lot more rigging the same time Ka came around. And so in the grand scheme of like what we now know as acrobatic rigging, all of that was happening right then. And so I pushed the guys in the scene shop. I'm like, I'd like to do more of this. I'd like to do more of this. And they wouldn't let me rig. But then I got a job at Circus Smirkus and I went off to be the rigger at Circus Smirkus for the summer. And then my friend who was developing a show wanted me to come perform in the show, a circus show. And I said, I'll come perform in the show, but I want to be the rigger for the show. And so in a span of just a couple, it again, not a fast transition, 2 or 3 years, I was like, well, I'm interested. I have some of this skill already, and I'm very interested in it. And now I'm very passionate about learning more about that. How can I get into it at a time where everyone was like, we don't let people in. Nobody gets in.
Oh, are you on the VIP list? You needed to be on the hot.
I had to sneak my way in sideways. And then once I got a job at a circus, and then I came back, and oddly enough, we were going to move away from Vegas, but I was still just applying for jobs. And I applied for a job at O, and I went in for the interview, and I had a terrible interview with Larry, the head rigger. It was bad. I didn't have anything they were looking for. But I had just got done doing flying trapeze in Florida with a guy named Tony Steele, and I brought his name up. And then Larry and I had a conversation about Larry's 35 years in circus
Yeah.
before he had this job. And I wasn't bucking for a job. I was interested. Like, this is new to me. I'm interested in this. It photos on the wall. And all those guys from that generation at those jobs at Cirque du Soleil all came out of that era of circus. And then Larry hired me.
Because
and
of
the
that
moving
connection.
trucks came on
Yeah.
Wednesday, and I started working at O on Monday. And then I think I left for 2 weeks to go back to Circus Smirkus. Once I got a job on O, I learned much more about what acrobatic rigging is and was, and the O team and the Ka team and the Iris team were like the three big rigging teams of Cirque du Soleil at the time. So those guys all came from different backgrounds. I learned a ton of stuff from every single one of them. I was 35 or something like that. So I was still very passionate about it and just devoured everything I could in the year and a half that I was at O. And then, long story short, once I was done at O, I moved to Iris in Los Angeles and was there for the 2 years for Iris. And at that point, now I'm an experienced rigger in that environment for the creation, and I'm able to solve problems. I became a guy we came to solve a bunch of problems. I had a bunch of ideas. I could build things. And I got all my superpowers at Iris in those 2 years. That's when I learned all the things I needed to learn to be able to hit the ground running and do things.
Yes.
Having come from independent films and small shows and circuses, I can work on shows that were smaller than that, But that's when I really got a chance to really come into my full power.
Wow. All I can imagine is you moving to Vegas and then you keep saying like, oh, 2 years there, 2 years there, 1 year. I think it's important to talk about how sometimes we need to be patient when we go through a career transition,
Yeah,
especially, I mean, yes, performers, artists, but anyone who's looking into transitioning into another career is to take the time and we all want to be on a rush to find a good next thing and feel passionate and I want to love this as much as the stage. And sometimes you will
sure.
find it, but also it's okay to take the time and potentially fail and not finding your next thing
Yeah.
tomorrow, you know?
Well, I think show business is unique as opposed to if I just wanted to go be an electrician, a
Yeah.
house electrician. Like, yeah, there would be steps I'd have to go through to be able to do that, but they need those. Like the people, those jobs are there. They'll gladly go from a crew of 10 people to 11 people or something like that. And entertainment has always been extremely unique, especially as a performer, because somebody has to put together a show for you to be a part of. And there are way more people that want to be a part of it than there are shows and opportunities.
Mhm.
And even if you want to build your own opportunities, that's no small task. So somebody has to let you pay for it, or you have to use a building. Like it's not, there's so many hoops to jump through.
Yes.
So even though, like, if I was to come out, even though I see technicians all the time, they come out of college, they get a job at Feld Entertainment, maybe they get a job at Cirque, maybe they get a job on a touring show or Disney on Ice or something like that. That's good. Most of them are able to do that pretty quickly. But still, even the most successful Broadway shows close without notice,
Mhm.
tours end, they
Mhm.
burn people out. They're not good jobs. And
Yeah.
I think it's our it takes a long time to realize that there'll be more. And so, whether you're a performer or anybody, I'm in a hurry. I'm passionate about it. I'm in a hurry. This opportunity is the greatest opportunity. Oops, it didn't work out. I'll never work again. This opportunity is the greatest opportunity.
Yeah.
And that pattern, if anybody's listening, that pattern doesn't go away for a long time.
Yeah. So true. Quick pause. If you are a performer wondering what's next, let's connect. Book a call with me or send me a message and visit my website where you can find more tips and tricks to navigate your career change. And don't forget to subscribe to this podcast for more inspiring stories and career tools. Now back to our chat. Oh, yeah. I am so curious. Can you share with us? You just talked about all the different jobs that someone who's interested in following your similar path, like yours, being a rigger. You did talk about how some people go to school and then they apply to serve different jobs. So I would love for you to talk about that. What would you recommend to someone who's interested in following a similar path? What
Hmm.
school should they go? What path? Like, give us a little bit of like, where should they start so you can save them some time in finding how to do that.
Oh,
Give us the good. Give us the
I,
good.
I think if there's an example I'm about to set, it's not that I can save you time.
Great.
Um, I my so the just so we're clear, the rigging that I do, I only do performer rigging. So
Yep.
I got very passionate about wanting to fly performers and not hang lights and not hang speakers, and I don't wash windows and I don't do stuff like that. So my path is, I don't think you could easily replicate it, and there's not a direct line to it. There's only a handful of companies you could end up working for that would bring you on and teach you or train you anything. But I think it goes back to, usually most people who end up getting into rigging are usually in the lighting department because they're the ones that have to do a lot of rigging as well, and then they'll move up through that area. But sure, you're whatever they're teaching in college now would be great to have. And then I still think it's an era where it's going to be on the job training. So find jobs that you can do that you enjoy doing and try to put as many of them together as you can. I mean, when I was an actor, I don't want to talk like I was an actor for 5 years going from one job to another. That's not how the first 5 years worked. I was an actor for 5 years. I might have done 7 shows in 5 years or something like that.
Yeah.
I just kept trying. But I think technicians have a quicker path. If you show up on time, You have a basic set of skills. That's all you need. A basic set of skills. You show up on time. You're not a hassle. You don't do drugs, which is a huge problem. You're able to maintain a good psychological health in the environment. That's great. Then you can work backstage as long as you want on any size show that you want. Once you get past that, once you get that out of the way and you're able to start doing it, then you can, I would start to advance your skills, and they're keeping an eye out for the things that you enjoy and that you like doing. Maybe you're much happier at music shows than theater shows. Maybe theater's the way to go, but theater's a lot harder than events.
Mhm.
And some people are very happy just doing corporate events and hanging lights and truss and things like that.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, can you tell us about what you currently do with Fight and Flight Entertainment?
Sure. After Iris closed, I just assumed I would eventually end up on another show, so I started freelancing. So I would go gladly hang your aerialists or acrobats at special events. I would go back to a circus camp. I started to help people install their own aerial studios. I did a little bit of consulting on other people's shows. And I started to do that kind of work at a time when aerial arts in the United States was kind of exploding. I started teaching workshops to aerialists about how to manage their own rigging. And then after about 2.5 years of doing that freelancing, I realized, well, this seems to be my job. I'm not doing anything else other than this keeps happening again and again. So I just crystallized it by making the title Fight or Flight Entertainment. I got a little business license. I kind of decided what I wanted to do. I didn't have a website for about another 2 years after that because I ended up getting on a consulting job that was kind of big, and they were like, "We want to show the company your website." I'm like, "Stand by," and I go like, "Make a little website." And it's either you could consider it to be either a very small company or a very expansive freelancing
Mm.
kind of job. Now, I don't. It doesn't have to do with the pandemic, but right about the pandemic, I was doing a lot more consulting, a lot more stuff from an office, a lot more what I call pointing at things and saying smart stuff. And I'm not climbing as much. I'm not swooping in all by myself to hang 10 aerialists at your theater show, which is what I was doing. And I did a bunch of, I was the head rigger for a bunch of circus festivals in the United States, at least 3 or 4 circus festivals in the United States. And then I made friends with people overseas. And I was the rigger for a circus festival in Edinburgh, Scotland, and went on to teach a workshop in Germany. And so between the teaching and the consulting, and just being really open to going places, and I'll hang your acrobats, I'll hang your aerialists, or I'll fly your stuff in your theater. Theaters are a real challenge. I just said yes to everything because I felt like I came to it late. I was still very passionate about it. I was learning a lot every time I did something. And as I went along doing that, uh, things would then level up and I would get bigger jobs or smarter jobs. Or now the jobs I get, I do much more sitting and talking than I do climbing on things. I still will climb things on occasion, but I do a good amount of sitting and talking.
What would you say, because you have people on your team that actually do the climbing and all,
Yeah,
or no?
I don't want to misrepresent. I don't have people that work for me full time. I
Yeah.
hire other freelancers, but I
Yeah.
also was, because I started, I think because of the way I was an actor and how many times I'd slept in my car to go to, because I couldn't afford a hotel at a gig. I was unaware that I could just hire people.
Mm.
So I was still, will very often go back to kind of like an independent film thought process of stuff of like, I'm going to keep this small. I'm going to keep it cheap. It's just going to be me. Like maybe I'll get one other person. And it took me a long time to learn the lesson of this goes way better if I just hire 3 other people to help me. Everything goes faster. And I was always under the impression that the clients didn't have the money for things like that. I wish I'd learned that lesson a lot sooner because they do. They do. They've set aside that certain amount of money. If I say we need a same thing now when I do movie and television work, I think like I'm always thinking about how I'm going to do it myself when it's really a 5-person job and they have the money to pay for it. You just have to give them You just have to give them a reason and an explanation as to why.
Hmm.
Like, I can
Hmm.
come do it. It's going to take me a week to do it, but we could do it with 3 guys in 1 day.
Yes, and then they have also the money to pay the hotel room, so you don't have
Yeah,
to be in
so it
your
gets
car.
better. I mean,
It gets better.
it was that same way when I was an actor. I remember the first time I got a hotel room, and I remember the first time I got per diem. I remember the first gig I ever got flown to
Mm,
that I didn't pay for, right? These were benchmarks as a performer. Some performers will walk into jobs and they'll be like, "Well, everybody else gets flown and they get all." I'm like, "Well, that's not this job. You're at the wrong show for this one." So I remember those benchmarks of I remember the first time, yeah, I remember the first time I made like $5,000, which was just an insane amount of money.
yeah.
And I got a hotel. This is crazy. Um, so when I moved into what I do now, I had a better scale of what's required there.
Yeah.
Uh, and I think it's really hard. Anybody that runs their own business and anybody that's a performer, they're one of their biggest challenges is picking how much they cost, picking their day rate,
Yeah.
because everyone else is telling you what they charge and they're all lying to you. And again, it's like anything. I think the way that I figured out what it costs for me to do this is two things. Is it's I can look back now and see, oh, it seems like this amount works best. But what nobody told me was I can just call everybody else who does it and ask them what they charge
Mm,
because they've had the same journey. And I never did that as a performer. I do it all the time now. I don't negotiate a contract or get involved in a project without calling somebody who's already worked for them and having a certain number of questions for them and straight up asking like what is it what do they pay or what are my challenges with it. I don't because I want to quote them what everybody else is paying to a certain degree.
mm.
I rarely I'm not the most expensive person who does what I do, but I've had to learn to ask better questions for sure.
This is so great. And for everyone who's listening, I absolutely love your approach to not be scared, not scared or hesitant to ask advice, feedback, especially your rate. You're right. You don't know. Your rate
Yeah,
here in the US versus going to Europe may be different, and you have zero idea. I
sure.
love that. It's so great.
There's no reason for it to be a secret. I asked the employer. They know. I learned that as a performer. I learned that as a performer. They're like, "What's your day rate? We want you to come do our show. What's your day rate for it, or what's the rate for the weekend?" And I'm like, I give a number that I've heard the other performers talk about, and of all of those times in those negotiations or those conversations, only one of them ever said to me, "Hey, man, that's not what we pay our people. We pay our people this much. Would this be okay with you?" And I'm like, why isn't everyone just leading with that? You know exactly
Yeah.
what you pay. And especially performers, you've got A-list performers on the gig and you've got B-list performers on the gig. And I was a B, but I was a top B. And they're like, look, we pay our A-list people about this and we pay our B-list people about that. And then now I'm in a way better conversation. I'm like, well, I'm in your B tier, but I feel like I'm at the top of your B tier. I'd be really happy with this amount. And now the conversation's over in 10 seconds as opposed to this
Yes.
secret hemming and
Yes.
hawing.
And this reminds me the same if you someone would work into or transition into the corporate world, you still have to have those kind of
Yeah.
conversations with salary negotiations. It's that painful conversation regardless. And if the answer is like, sorry, we cannot afford you, you have to either accept what you're being
Sure.
offered or being okay to walk away.
Yeah.
And yeah,
Right.
that is, yeah,
And it's way easier later when you're
yeah,
more successful and it's okay to be like, all right, fine, it's
exactly.
not for me. Somebody else
Yeah.
will take that on. But when you're young and hungry, and I don't even think it's the money thing, I just think it's the opportunity. I want to do shows. I want to come hang your acrobats and I want to do shows and I want to do it a lot. And I need you to give me this opportunity.
Yeah.
And I think that drives so much of it. It's unfortunate the money conversation is as uncomfortable as it can be. You know,
Mm.
when I work with a lot of now that I'm in Atlanta and I had a circus school and a training center here and I dealt with a lot of stunt people, everybody's in the union, SAG, and they set the rates for everybody. So everybody that gets in knows exactly what they're going to make every day. There's no negotiation. They don't have to do stuff like that. It's about like $1,000 a day is what you get if you're doing something for SAG. And then if when I would bring them on to do projects with me, they'd be like, "Well, we're going to make $1,000 a day, right?" And I'm like, "We're probably not. Just be clear.
Yes.
Like that's a lot of money." And they don't go home with that. They go home with $600 a day
Yeah.
because of taxes and fees and everything else that gets taken out of it. So I'll tell them, like, you can be unemployed tomorrow, or you can come work with me and we'll make much closer to what you take home.
Yeah.
And then you can do what you want to
Yeah.
with it. And that's perfectly acceptable. I almost nobody's ever, once you explain it like that, nobody ever really pushes back on it. But
Yes.
they have the luxury. They have the luxury of not having to go through this what do I cost process.
Exactly. Wow, this is so great. I didn't know you were in Atlanta.
Yes.
How do you like it over there?
I like it a lot. I moved away for
Yeah.
last year, but I like it
Yeah.
a lot. I didn't come here for showbiz. I came here because I was in Vegas before this and I wanted a house with trees and grass, and I have a
Hmm.
dog who likes to be outside and we go swimming and stuff like that. So,
Hey. Yeah. Yeah. So, Brett, before I let you go, can you please share with anyone here who's interested in rigging? What
mm.
advice would you give them?
I think rigging is parallel to stunts in that people, there's a lot of personality involved in it, or there's a lot of, they're kind of like, it's a little bit of a jockey sort of idea behind it. And I think the best thing to do is to really look at it scientifically. I consider myself to be a scientist. I'm there to work out the physics and the risk reduction of things. Any industry that's heavily involved in safety will immediately use safety as a tool to gain an advantage over others, or they'll make other people afraid to make themselves more important. Everybody can do whatever they want. I think it's really cheap to try to make people afraid, and there's way more science to it. If you just acquire your basic set of skills and have a good understanding about what your job is there, I think you'll be on the right track. And riggers need to learn how to use tools. They need to be able to climb to a certain degree. They need to know how the equipment works and what the equipment is. And I think honestly, I think the best thing that anybody that wants to get into rigging could do is get a job on a rigging team with other riggers. One of the things that it affords us is that if you have 200 feet of rope, 10 carabiners, and 2 pulleys, now you can hang all the acrobats you want at every music festival you want to, but you've never worked for anyone else. You've never been a part of a team that's holding you accountable for
Mm.
what you know and what you don't know. Of course, I think that because that was my path, where I was on a team of people that were way more awesome than me. So all I wanted to do was be just as skilled as they were. And but we were really interested on those teams to be the best team we could be, and we would geek out about how good of riggers we could be.
Yes.
So we would do extra rope access training, and we would set up, we didn't have anything to do, so we're going to do some rescues. And what if we redesigned the way the trapeze comes in on this show? We had that opportunity, but
Hmm.
I think it's a team aspect of surrounding yourself with people who are somewhat more knowledgeable than you, who aren't who've got the right attitude of like, well, how good does everyone want to be? Because
Yes.
that was mine. And then when I've had the chance to be a head rigger and when I've trained teams, and now when I go into train teams, that's kind of my attitude about it. I don't try to crush everybody with information about how important we are, because we're not. We're just a part of the show. I really will give them levels of, hey, man, we could just do this. But if you want, we could do this next level if you want. And what if we did this?
Yeah.
And what if we did that? And then usually my question ends up being like, all of them will work fine for what we're doing, but ultimately, like, how good do you want to be? How far do you want to go? I have
Mm.
people come to me all the time saying, I do probably 2 or 3 times a month, someone will email me because I've got some amount of presence, and they're like, how do I get into it? Or what do I do? Or I want to learn more about it. And I try to send them on a path or two about it, but usually I will offer an opportunity for them to learn something and they will tap out and they give up.
What
And
would you say? Why?
I'd be like, hey man, you give me a list of the 5 things you want to learn. You can come over to the house on the weekend and I'll teach you all 5 of them. And I had to stop doing that because then nobody would take me up on it.
Interesting.
And
Huh.
I don't know I'm not entirely sure the psychology behind it. Maybe I made it too easy,
Yeah.
but then I also go through phases where I don't help people anymore. Like
Yeah.
somebody has used up my help over time and
Yeah.
it needs to recharge.
Yes. Yes.
But usually it's when that happens, and it happens more often than you might think. They'll be like, I want to learn, I want to learn, I want to learn. I'm like, I'm game. I want to teach. I enjoy teaching the things that I know. Let's do it. And I'd say probably 9 out of 10 of them just kind of
Okay.
they give up on it.
Whoever is listening right now, Brett is willing to help. Okay. So,
Well, I in my both in my performing in there's a lot of nobody's there to help you when you're a performer or when you're a rigger or in any job. We're all too busy to help each other. Nobody wants to help you. So I think it takes 35 years to look back and realize I was really lucky to have these people who decided that their life would be better if they taught me 3 things. And that's how I got to the point that I am in either career
yeah.
to whatever amount of success.
I love that. Brett, thank you so much. You will be someone's mentor soon. I can feel it. It's going to happen.
They're out there. Hang on. I've got my kids. My kids are out there. But
yes. Thank you so much for today and for sharing your story. It's very, you've done so many different things and you took your time. You trusted the opportunity. You followed your gut. And yeah, it's really inspiring.
well, I hope somebody thinks it was funny, the stories I tell.
Yes,
I don't
you
have to
are
be
funny.
I don't want to be the best rigger. I just want to be the funniest rigger.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Of course, I had a great time. Thanks for having me on.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for listening to Recast and Rise. If today's story made a difference, share it with a fellow artist and creative friend. Be sure to subscribe to this podcast and follow me on my socials for tips and tricks to navigate your career change. Until next time, I will see you in the next episode.